So I'm Mr. Smith, and today we're going to be looking at rounding integers using significant figures. Now, rounding is something you might have come across before when thinking about decimal places, and rounding to significant figures uses pretty much the same concept, but if you haven't rounded to decimal places, then don't worry, we're going to cover everything in this video. First, what even is a significant figure? Well, say I'm thinking of a number, and you have no idea what that number is, but you want to know approximately what size it is. And I say to you that I'll let you know any one of the digits. Now, which digit would you choose to have the best idea about how big that number is? Now, if it was me, I'd want to know this first digit, because that tells us that there's a 7 in the thousands. Now, knowing that there's a 6 in the tens doesn't really help me know how big this number is, but this 7 is far more important because it tells us the rough size. And so we call this the first significant figure. Now, the next digit we'd want to know is this 3 in the hundreds, and this is the second significant figure, and there's a bit of a pattern here because the next number is the third, and the final digit is the fourth significant figure. And working out the significant figures for any integer pretty much works the same way. The first number is the first significant figure, the second number is the second significant figure, and that just continues down to the last digit. So when we're identifying significant figures, we go from left to right. So why do we want to round to a significant figure? Well, let's think about this number, and say this represents the number of people in a town, so 316,423. Well, if we round this to one significant figure, and I'll show you how to do that in just a bit, we get 300,000. And if we're thinking about populations, then knowing there's about 300,000 is far simpler than knowing this exact value. And so it's quicker to understand the approximate size. We can estimate calculations that use the exact value to make sure we're in the right ballpark. And finally, you need to know how to do this for your exams. So now we're going to have a go at these examples. Now first we're going to need to round 519 to one significant figure. And the important thing here is this 1. So in our number, let's work out what the first significant figure is, but that's just this first one here. And then to work out which way to round this, we're going to put a line here. And it's useful for you to do this too when you're writing out your workings. And then we look at the number after this line. Now if this is a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3 or a 4, then we just keep this number the same and we add zeros for all these other digits. And that's called rounding down or rounding off. And let's think about this a slightly different way. If we've got 519, then we know it's somewhere between 500 and 600. And which one is that closest to? Well, it's 500. And that's another useful way to know which way to round. And this answer is to one significant figure. And here I've been a bit lazy and I've just written s.f. and that's absolutely fine. And it's actually the notation that you'll normally see. Next, why don't you pause the video and work through this question, and then I'll go through the workings in a few seconds. So now I'll go through the workings. We've got 3,950, and again, we're going to round this to one significant figure. So let's find that first significant figure, and that's just the first digit, and then we're going to draw a line after that first digit. Then we're going to look at this second digit to work out which way it rounds. Now, if the number after this line is a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8 or a 9, then we need to round up. And what that means is the number before the line goes up by 1. And then we replace everything after the line with zeros. And again, we can think about this another way. This number here is between 3,000 and 4,000. And which one is it closest to? Well, that's 4,000, right? And so 3,950 is 4,000 to one significant figure. Here we've got a couple more questions. And what do you notice about the question? Well, we're rounding now to two significant figures. So we're going to have to do a little bit more work to work out how to round these numbers. So here in 748, well, we know the 7's the first significant figure because it's this first digit. And so this 4 is the second significant figure, and that's the one we're interested in. Now remember before, we put a line after the significant figure, just like this. And then we need to look at the number after the line, and here that's an 8. And just like before, if that digit's a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8 or a 9, then we've got to round up. And this 4 becomes a 5, and then we replace all the other digits after the significant figures by 0. Finally, why don't you pause the video and try and work through question B, and then we'll go through the workings together. So let's go through the workings. Again, we're doing this to two significant figures, and the second significant figure here is this 9. So let's put a line after the 9, and the number after that line is a 1. So that means we're going to round down. And we replace this 1 and this 8 with zeros, and so we've got 8,900 to two significant figures. And this kind of working is roughly what I'd expect you to do when you're working through questions on rounding to a significant figure. And so, what have we actually learned? Well, the first thing we saw is that the first significant figure is just the first digit in an integer, and we identify significant figures from left to right. And then we looked at how to round a significant figure. And remember that we just identify the significant figure that we're interested in. We'll look at the number after that digit. We round down if that number is one of these, or round up if that number is one of these. And finally, we replace all the other digits after the significant figure with 0. And so you can keep referring back to this as you work through the questions. So thank you for listening, and I hope that helped.